go ahead and get started. If you would, put your name in the left-hand column under 2030.008. Very end of Act 1. We didn't discuss this the other day, so I want to just spend a couple of minutes on it. Just before the end of the scene, Hamlet tells Horatio and Marcellus, this part we did discuss briefly, Hamlet tells Horatio and Marcellus, if from this point on I put on an antic disposition, I act crazy, don't let it out that you know I'm acting crazy. Okay? Notice what he tells us there, or what he's suggesting. From this point on, there might be times when I seem crazy. Okay? How do we know when those times are? In other words, how do we as audience know when Hamlet is acting crazy as opposed to if he is crazy? Okay, possibly. I mean, later on we're going to see Hamlet's going to have an interview with his mother in her bedroom. Hamlet's going to see the ghost. She doesn't. She thinks he's flipping bonkers. And he's like, come here. Take my pulse. Look at my eyes. Do I have a fever? Do I have all of the symptoms of somebody being crazy? He says, no, I don't. So don't attribute this to craziness. Okay? My point is, Hamlet tells us he's going to act crazy. Okay? His first soliloquy, he's talking about the contemplation of suicide. Most people, psychologists definitely would suggest, someone who is contemplating suicide is not in his or her right mind. For the simple reason, one of the basic premises, or not premises, one of the basic primal urges of life is to do what? Continue living. It's self-preservation. You know, animals will move away from what that is a predator. They'll move away. Okay? So, he goes on, end of that passage, and Hamlet gets another soliloquy. Okay? So everybody swears. Take that back. It's not a soliloquy. Hamlet tells them, the very last lines of the Act 1. With all my love I do commend me to you, and what so poor a man as Hamlet is may do to express his love and friending to you, God willing shall not lack. That is, when the time comes, I will do whatever I can to repay you for this favor, to help you out. All right? Let us go in together. That is, they've been out on the battle works, okay, the platform in front of the castle, this whole time. Now they're going to go back into the castle. Apparently their time of watch has ended. Let us go in together and still your fingers on your lips, I pray. That is, not a word. Don't say anything about what you've seen and heard here. And then he says this, the time is out of joint. Joint. What is a joint? It's where two things connect, right? An orthopedic surgeon, I've got one, he's like on speed dial. I mean, the guy's done close to 20 surgeries on my knees and shoulders and stuff, okay? An orthopedic surgeon deals with what? Joints, okay? Where bones meet, where ligaments and tendons meet bone, etc., things like that. The time is out of joint, meaning there's a slip. There's a problem there. If you think of that great chain of being, it could be used to also describe time. 1 second, 1 second, 1 second, 1 second, oops, slip. So time is out of joint So it's got to get fixed. At some point of your life, you've probably seen some kind of science fiction episode, TV, film, where someone gets involved in a time loop, someone gets involved out of phase of time, and the whole premise becomes that's got to be fixed so that the person can come back to his or her proper reality in time. Time is out of joint. O cursed spite, that ever I was born to set it right. Hamlet is saying, I have a purpose. I have a destiny. I was born for what purpose? For this very moment in time. However old he is, he was born so many years ago for the distinct purpose he is suggesting to fix this break in chronology. Nay, come, let's go together. The nay, come, let's go together, I think that implies they've headed on ahead of him, and he's like, whoa, slow down. We'll all go in together, okay? Act 2. So there's another idea. Time. Something's wrong. It's got to get fixed. Act 2. We're in Polonius' house, okay? Polonius is talking to a servant that he's sending off to France. The guy's name is Reynaldo. Why is Polonius sending him to France? What is his purpose in going to France? It's tied in with one of the main themes. Louder? What? His son's in France, so he's sending Reynaldo to Paris to do what? Spy on his son. Okay? Spying is a major theme in this play. Or observing, if you don't want to use spying can be, looked at negatively. Personally, if you're spying, to me, it's automatically negative. Okay? So, Polonius tells him what he wants him to look for, Is he overspending? Is he spending too much time with the wrong people? Is he making himself too commonly available? That is he following the advice I gave him? Okay? The very fact that he's sending him to do this tells us what about Polonius regarding his son? He doesn't trust him. Okay? Which could be another, sub-theme in the play, the issue of trust. So, we're not going to talk about what they talk about. Just know that he's, from the beginning of that to line 70, beginning of the scene to line 70, is all about Polonius and Reynaldo talking about what Reynaldo is going to do in Paris. And it concludes with, observe his inclination in yourself. That is, I want you to do this, okay? And you've got a gloss down there. In your own person, not by spies. So you go watch him. Ophelia comes in. Now, from the text of the play, what was the last interaction between Polonius and Ophelia? What did he tell her to do? Stay away from Hamlet. Don't let him come into your room. Don't talk to him. Don't receive anything from him. Okay? And she says, oh, my Lord, I've been so frightened. What? Hamlet. My Lord, as I was sewing in my closet, Lord Hamlet with his doublet, all unbraced, no hat upon his head, his stockings fouled, ungartered and down jived to his ankle, pale as his shirt, his knees knocking each other, and with a look so piteous in purport as if he had been loosed out of hell to speak of horrors. He comes before me. Now, everything she has just described about Hamlet, in terms of his lack of, lack of attention to his clothing. Okay? These are all, in Shakespeare's day and in the Middle Ages, symptoms of lovesickness, an actual medical diagnosis. Why are these symptoms of lovesickness? Notice every one of them involves a lack of something. A lack of attention to tying or buttoning his doublet. His hose are not pulled up and tied. They're down around his ankles, so his bare legs show. He's not wearing a hat. This is Renaissance idea of male fashion, by the way. Okay, what a man wears. So, his doublet is unbraced. He's not wearing a hat. His stockings are fouled. Not meaning they're dirty, means they're not properly tied and worn. Ungartered, down jive to his ankle, pale as his shirt. His knees knocking together like he's nervous or afraid. Okay? And with a look so piteous, he comes before me. Now notice, as if he'd been loosed out of hell. Our previous scene with Hamlet, what did Hamlet see? The ghost of his father. And the ghost tells Hamlet that during the day he is where? It's not hell. His soul is bound to fast in fires until the misdeeds of his life are purged from him. Okay? Kind of sounds like hell, but it's purgatory. Because if he's in hell, he can't come out of hell. So, but even the ghost says, if I were to tell you everything that happens there, it would harrow your soul. That is, it would kill you. The mere mention of it would kill you. Mad for thy love? Notice he immediately assumes Hamlet is lovesick, kind of. But he doesn't say lovesick. He says mad, crazy, antic, to use Hamlet's term. Okay? I do not know. Remember, he asked her earlier, what do you make of these tenders, as he calls them? I do not know what to think, my lord. She's like, I don't know, Daddy. Tell me. I'm just a silly girl. Okay? Feminist criticism just rips apart Ophelia, by the way. Or, I should say, rips apart Shakespeare for his portrayal of Ophelia. So, what did he say? He took me by the wrist and held me hard. Then he goes to the length of all his arm. So, if I'm Ophelia and she's standing here, Hamlet grabs her arm, so Hamlet's now here, takes her by the wrist, and then extends his arm all the way out and her arm all the way out, so they're like 6 feet apart. And with his other hand thus over his brow, and so he puts this hand over his brow like he's trying to see in the distance or shading his face, one of the two. He falls to such perusal of my face as I would draw it. So he does this, extends, puts his hand over his brow, and just looks at her. Long stayed he so. At last, a little shaking of mine arm, that is, she's like, hello, I'm here, wake up, Hamlet. And thrice his head thus waving up and down, he raised a sigh so piteous and profound, blah, 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 blah. Come on, we got to go talk to the king. This is the very ecstasy of love. Ecstasy. You don't have a gloss. You should. What does ecstasy mean? Not the modern meaning. We think today, happy, elated, if you're ecstatic, it means you feel great. That's why there's a drug named ecstasy. It makes you feel good. And Ecstasy is an out-of-body experience when the soul leaves the body, not in death, in life. So the body remains kind of in a state of suspended animation while the soul wanders around. There's a poem by John Donne. We're going to read some poems by John Donne later. There's a poem by John Donne titled The Ecstasy. And it's about two people, a man and a woman, sitting by a riverbank, holding hands, looking at each other all day long. They just sit there. Their hands are cemented together, probably by sweat. And they're just looking in each other's eyes. And the whole poem is about, while their bodies are sitting there doing that, their souls have risen out of their bodies and had this big, long conversation. And it's a negotiation about, entirely, let's go back down to our bodies and let's mix our bodies as our souls have mixed up here. In other words, it's about sex. It's one of the greatest non-sex sex poems in the world because it's this beautiful explanation or exposition of platonic love, but even platonic love has to be, between male and female at least, has to be realized. Okay? So, we got to go see the king. Why? If Hamlet keeps going like this, something bad will happen. It leads the will to desperate undertakings as oft as any passion under heaven that does afflict our natures. Love spurned will cause people to do crazy things. Okay? Have you given him any hard words of late? What do you mean by hard words? Hamlet, go yourself. Like that. She says, no, my good lord. And then she passes the buck. I merely did as you commanded. I did repel his letters and denied his access to me. Yes, those are hard words. If you've ever been in love and someone says, no, I don't love you, it doesn't get any harder than that, okay? That hath made him mad. British sense, not American sense. By Americans mad, we mean angry. British sense, English sense, old original meaning is crazy, certifiable, postal, you know. I'm sorry that with better heed and judgment I had not quoted him. What does he mean, quoted him? You've got a gloss. I'm afraid to look at it. Observed. Okay. Not really observed, though. What did Polonius tell Ophelia about Hamlet's tenders of affections? They were false. And he actually makes some comment about, I think it's going to come up a little bit later, that I was like that too when I was Hamlet's age. Not true love. In other words, he assumed Hamlet's tenders of affections were all to get Ophelia in bed. Why? Because that's what he was like when he was Hamlet's age. This, is an interesting admission or confession on his part. I'm sorry that with better heed and judgment I had not quoted him. This is his way of saying, oops, I shouldn't have told you to be wary of Hamlet. Polonius is implying, what about Hamlet's affection towards Ophelia? Is it just about sex? No, it's not. I fear he did but trifle. I feared he did but trifle. And meant to rack thee. I love that line in Shakespeare. To rack thee, like to put thee on a rack, to bed her. Okay? But beshrew my jealousy. Fathers, daughters, Freud goes into all kinds of stuff about Father's having trouble with men marrying their daughters because the father secretly wants to be the one doing it. It's the whole Oedipal / Electra, depending upon the sex, complex. By heaven, it is as proper to our age to cast beyond ourselves and our opinions as it is common for the younger sort to lack discretion. In other words, I forgot what it was like to be young. Dumbledore says the exact same thing, by the way, in the Harry Potter novels to Harry in book 5. He says, come on, we got to go to the king. Scene 2. King and queen come in. We're introduced to Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, who you can refer to as Guildenstern and Rosencrantz. It doesn't matter. The characters are interchangeable. They have no real character. They're flat stock characters, all right? In fact, Tom Stoppard, very, very famous British playwright, wrote a play in the 60s called Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead. It's one of the premier pieces of theater of the absurd. Okay? So, they come in with the king and queen, and the king addresses them. He says, something have you heard of Hamlet's transformation? So call it. That is, for the moment, let's call it that. Since neither the exterior nor the inward man resembles that it was. So Hamlet's transformed. Why? Because outwardly, he's not like he used to be, and seemingly inwardly, he's not like he used to be either. So Hamlet is transformed, changed into not Hamlet. All right? What should it be? What it should be more than his father's death, that hath thus put him so much from the understanding of himself, I cannot dream of. Notice what the king just said about Hamlet. That hath put him so much from the understanding of himself. What does that mean? Louder?
He's not himself.
Keep going. So if he's not himself, what is he? He's crazy. He's crazy. He's not acting like himself. No, officer. So-and-so would never do that. That's totally out of the norm. Okay? So notice, people are now noticing Hamlet's not himself. Are they noticing it now because behind the scenes, so to speak, he's putting on an antic disposition? Or is it because he's wearing black all the time, like when we first saw him? So, go find out what is wrong. Why does he send Rosencrantz and Guildenstern? Friends of his. Unlike Horatio, they are childhood friends of his. Horatio's a university friend. We're never told that Hamlet and Horatio were best buds from their early years. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, we're told they are. Okay? So, Queen says, he's talked about you a lot. I'm sure there are not two men living to whom he more adheres, that is more closely bound. So, find out what you can. They say, we will, we both obey, and here give up ourselves in the full bit to lay our service freely at your feet. So, what are they actually being told to do? Spy on Hamlet. To friends, spy on friends. Thank you. I was going to start to have, some doubt about your generation. Yeah, they don't, hopefully. So, they leave. Polonius comes in. Okay? Polonius talks about, the ambassadors from Norway and such. Voltimand comes in. Voltimand leaves. We're going to skip all that. It's not important. And Polonius gets a little speech at the bottom of page 1266, lines 85 and following. It's one of his most famous little speeches because it shows, I'm going to characterize him for a moment, what a prattling fool Polonius is. Which is why some actors really like to play him. He can be like playing Bottom in A Midsummer Night's Dream. You can just let everything out and just go crazy with this character. This business is well ended. That is the business with the ambassadors. My liege and madam, to expostulate what majesty be, what majesty should be, what duty is, why day is day, night, night, and time is time. We're nothing but to waste night, day, and time. Therefore, since famous quote, brevity is the soul of wit, in tediousness the limbs and outward flourishes, I will be brief. What has he just shown, however? He's not being brief. He is tedious. Okay? Your noble son is mad. Mad call I it, for to define true madness, what is it but to be nothing else but mad? But let that go. Queen, more matter, less art. What does she mean? Yeah, get to the point. Less art, less rhetoric. Less using fancy words and phrases and similes and images. He says, I use no art at art. That he is mad, 'tis true. 'Tis true, 'tis pity. In pity, 'tis true. A foolish figure, but farewell it, for I will use no art. Mad, let us grant him. That is, let us take for the premise of a logical argument, he's crazy. Then, mad, let us grant him then. Now remains that we find out the cause of this effect. Or, not using that he's mad, let's call that the premise. Let's call that the conclusion. So, he's mad. Now we have to find out the causes. The 1 + 1 that made him mad. Or rather say the cause of this defect. Why? For this effect effective comes by cause. Notice, madness isn't an effect. Madness is what? A defect, right? It's a not good. Thus it remains, and the remainder thus. Perpend, that is, think. I have a daughter. Have, while she is mine, who, in her duty and obedience, mark, hath given me this. And he pulls out a letter. And he starts to read it. And he criticizes it, doesn't like some of the wording. Queen, this is from Hamlet? Hold on, let me finish. And he keeps reading. King, how has she received his love? Polonius, what do you think of me? Well, that doesn't answer the question. But what's his point? The king asks, how did your daughter receive Hamlet's love? What do you think of me? His question in response gets at the nature of his and his family's, let's put it, relationship to the king. I don't mean relationship servant advisor. I mean like genetic. There is none, right? They're not royal. What do you think of me? As of a man faithful and honorable, I would fain prove so. But what might you think when I'd seen this hot love on the wing, as I perceived it? I must tell you that before my daughter told you. What might you think if I had played the desk or table book? That is, if I had encouraged her. You would think ill of me, is his point. Why? Hamlet is out of her league. Because he's a prince. That's it. There is no marriage for love. Marriage is for convenience in terms of political alliances. Okay? So he says, no, I went round to work. I told her, Hamlet's a prince. He's out of your star. That is, out of your rotation, out of your sphere. Okay? So he says, and so she's denied his entry. She's denied his access to her, his conversation. King, you really? You think that's it? He doesn't ask that of Polonius. He looks to Gertrude. Why? Who's going to know Hamlet better? Gertrude or Polonius? Gertrude, the king, the queen, his mother. She says, could be. Polonius, has there ever been a time when I positively said, 'tis so, and I've been wrong? Not that I know. And he points to his head and shoulder and says, take this from this, if I'm wrong now. Little bit of foreshadowing. He's not literally going to get beheaded, but he is going to get the effect of being beheaded. He's going to die. Why? Because he is wrong. He is wrong. A lot of critics, ask, ooh, did Hamlet really love Ophelia? It's a stupid question. The play makes it pretty clear. Hamlet loved Ophelia. Ophelia loved Hamlet. Okay? So, they keep talking. Why did he bring up his daughter other than Hamlet's in love with her and she's rejected him? Sometimes he comes and walks in the gallery in this lobby for 4 hours at a time. He just paces back and forth and thinks. He's a philosopher. He meditates on life. Yeah, he does. At such a time, look at the language he uses. Line 161. I'll loose my daughter to him. There's a line in, it's either one of the Henry IV plays or Henry V, where a character cries out, it says, cry havoc and loose the dogs of war. Gets quoted in Star Trek, The Wrath of Khan, by the way, interestingly. What does that mean? I'll loose my daughter to him. Come here, Ophelia. There he is. Sick him. What is she going to become? Not a dog on the hunt. She's going to be just another Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. He's going to make his daughter spy on Hamlet. But not only that. At such a time, I'll loose my daughter to him. Be you and I behind an arras then, and mark the encounter. Okay? So, we have the stage. We have the tiring house here. We have the doorway and a doorway. Curtain, curtain. He says, for the purpose of this scene that he's talking about, Hamlet's going to come out, and this is going to be the gallery where he walks for 4 hours. At such a time, I'll loose my daughter on him, and you and I will be standing behind an arras. And notice, and we will mark the encounter. Will they see the encounter? An arras is a curtain, a tapestry. No, they won't see it, but they'll hear it. Hearing is spying. If he love her not and be not from his reason fallen thereon, let me be no assistant for a state, but keep a farm and carters. King says, okay, we'll do that. And then he goes, oh look, Hamlet's coming. The king and queen leave. Because Polonius says, I'll board him presently. Board. It's a naval military term. Okay? When you board another vessel, it's when you throw a board from your ship to the other ship. The board has nails or spikes in it so that it'll stick into the railing. And you run across and take control. Polonius is saying, I'll take control of him presently. Tables get turned, though. How does my good Lord Hamlet? Well, God of mercy. Do you know me, my lord? Excellent will. You are a fishmonger. A fishmonger, literally the word means a seller of fish. Go to Britain today. Go to England today. Go to London. You can go in a fishmonger shop. It'll literally say, sign over the door, fishmonger. You can go in an ironmonger's shop. An ironmonger sells iron. In the United States, we call that a hardware store. It sells hard wares. Hard, iron wares, okay? You're a fishmonger. But in British English, fishmonger also has a connotation. A pimp. You are a procurer of flesh. Okay? Not I, my lord. That's what Polonius assumes Hamlet means by it. Okay? Fishmonger, an opprobrious expression meaning bawd procurer. That's one meaning. It does also mean a seller of fish. They should have included both. Then I would you were so honest a man. Honest, my lord? Wait, how's a pimp an honest man? I, sir, to be honest as this word goes, is to be one man picked out of 10,000. Hamlet doesn't address the real question. You go to a pimp for what purpose? To buy a hooker. You don't go to a pimp to buy a salmon steak. You're going to the wrong fishmonger for that. In other words, you're going to get what you pay for. That's honest trade. That's honest dealing. That's kind of Hamlet's point. Okay, yeah, to be honest today, it's to be one man out of 10,000. What's that kind of say about the view of the world? So I couldn't even say anybody in here is honest. Couldn't even say anybody probably on campus right now is honest, because there's probably not 10,000 people on campus yet. For the son, if the son breed maggots in a dead dog, being a good kissing carrion, what? For if the son breed maggots in a dead dog, being a good kissing carrion. Okay, first of all, the son breeding maggots in a dead dog. That is a Renaissance medieval ancient belief. How does a dead carcass of an animal suddenly have little squirming, mealyworm, maggoty things in it? Because the sun impregnates it. The sun inseminates this carcass, and the product of that is maggots. Okay? So that's the first point. If the sun breed maggots in a dead dog, being a good kissing carrion, because the sun kisses whatever it lights upon. Okay, notice where he's going now. So, the sun, dead dog, kissing. Have you a daughter? What's Hamlet's point? He's going to get to it in just a second. But you can already start to get there. I have, my lord. And notice how I read that line. I would, if I were directing this, I would have Polonius go, I have, my lord, and maybe back up a step. Like, I think I know where you're going with this, but it's kind of scary. And you're way out there, Hamlet. Let her not walk in the sun. Why? Well, if the sun could breed maggots in a dead carcass of a dog, God forbid, what is it going to do to your daughter? Conception is a blessing. Why? Because the Old Testament tells us children are a blessing of God. But as your daughter may conceive, friend, look to it. So if he doesn't want her to walk in the sun, try to look at this logically. What should she do? If she's in danger of conceiving by being in the sun's light, don't go out in the sun, right? Stay locked up in a room. Or only go out at night, like a vampire. Aside. So Polonius addresses us, the audience. Hamlet doesn't hear this. How say you by that? Still harping on my daughter. Yet he knew me not at first. Said I was a fishmonger. It's far gone. Far gone. And truly, in my youth, I suffered much extremity for love. Very near this. I'll speak to him again. What do you read, my lord? Because Hamlet's got a book. Words, words, words. Really? Very literal response, right? That's why people don't like going to movies with me, especially if the movie is an adaptation of a book, because I'll just sit there and I'll rip the thing to shreds. There's only been a few that I've really liked. What is the matter? That is, what is the substance of the words? Hamlet, however, takes what is the matter, my lord, to be what's the matter between who? Like, what's the difficulty? What's the conflict? Right? Because we use that same phrase today. What's the matter? You look at somebody, they don't quite look right. I mean the matter that you read. Oh, that. Slanders. For the satirical road says here that old men have gray beards, their faces are wrinkled, their eyes purging thick amber, and plum tree grum, and that they have a plentiful lack of wit, together with most weak hams. He's just described what? Old men. It's a pretty accurate description. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing inaccurate about it. For the most part. Hamlet says, all which, sir, though I most powerfully and potently believe, that is, even though it's all true, yet I hold it not honesty to have it thus set down. That is, it shouldn't be said. For yourself, sir, should be old as I am, if like a crab you could go backward. Right over Polonius's and most people's head. Because what's Hamlet mean? I am older than most. He doesn't mean physical age. He means in here. Kind of like spiritual, mental age. Though this be madness, yet there is a method in it. And if there's method, if there's logic to it, probably not madness. Will you walk out of the air, my lord? That is Hamlet. Let's go out. Let's get in the sun. Let's get out of this stuffy air in here. It's kind of affecting your brain. It doesn't say all that. It's just, will you walk out of the air? Hamlet, into my grave? Well, think about it for a moment. Indeed, that's out of the air. Because that into your grave would mean into the earth. See, we walk in the air now on the earth. How pregnant sometimes his replies are. A happiness that madness often hits on, which reason and sanity could not so prosperously be delivered of. He says, I'll contrive the means of getting him to meet my daughter. My honorable lord, I most humbly take my leave of you. So I'm going to take, notice, something from you. What's the thing he's going to take? His leaving. It's a strange expression, which is why Hamlet latches onto it. You cannot, sir, take from me anything that I will more willingly part with all. In other words, get the hell out of my space. You can't take that because I want you to leave. Accept my life, accept my life, accept my life. You can take that. Kill me now, kill me now, kill me now. What is Hamlet doing in the entire scene? Antic disposition. He's portraying craziness. But even in portraying craziness, he's giving us clues, okay, into his real mind. So, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern come in. Polonius leaves, and Hamlet talks with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. He asks them how they are. They say, we're fine, man. Everything's great. Guildenstern, line 220, happy in that we are not over happy. On Fortune's cap, we are not the very button. Okay, Fortune is being described as a goddess, but Fortune always turns her wheel. Okay, so on Fortune's cap, we are not. So Fortune's cap would be up here. We're not the button. We're not this thing that sits at the top of a cap. All right? So I'm using, because I can't draw a body. You can do a stick figure, but. On Fortune's cap, we're not the very bottom. We're not the very button. Hamlet, nor the sole of her shoe, down here at the bottom. Neither, my lord. Hamlet, then you live about her waist, or in the middle of her favors. Right here. So, do the stick figure, shoulders, legs. Waist is right here. Hamlet's just made a dirty pun. Okay? They live about her waist. Guildenstern, her privates we. That is, yes, we live about her privates. Hamlet, in the secret parts of fortune, oh, most true, she is a strumpet. Fortune's a whore. Why? Because everyone sleeps with fortune. Everyone and everything sleeps with fortune. Everything experiences, trees, plants, animals experience the ups and downs of fortune. Okay? So, Hamlet says, what's the news? None, my lord, but the world's grown honest. Hamlet, and doomsday is near. But that's not true. Why are you here? Who sent you to this prison hither? Prison, my lord? Denmark's a prison. Then is the world one. Hamlet, a goodly one, in which there are many confines, wards, and dungeons, Denmark being one of the worst. We think not so, my lord. And now Shakespeare starts to just get really deep philosophically. We think not so, my lord. Why then 'tis none to you. If you don't think Denmark's a prison, then to you, Denmark is not a prison. For there is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. To me, it is a prison. Less than 100 years after Shakespeare writes this, less than 50 years after Shakespeare writes this, John Milton is going to write a really, really, really long poem called Paradise Lost about the fall of Adam and Eve. Okay? And in it, he puts in the mouth of Satan the words, better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. And he says, the mind is able to make a heaven of hell, a hell of heaven. Why? Because if you don't want to worship God in heaven, then what is that state? What is heaven? And this is, by the way, this is a classical early church fathers kind of definition of hell. Hell is not a physical place. Heaven is not a physical place. They're both the presence of God, depending upon your perspective. If you want to be in the presence of God, it's heaven. If you don't, it's hell. Hamlet is saying essentially the same thing. It all depends on one's perspective. There is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. To me, it's a prison. So Rosencrantz tries to outsmart Hamlet, or tries to delve into why Hamlet thinks so. Why, then your ambition makes it one. 'Tis too narrow for your mind. And bear in mind, Denmark, if you were to look at a map, Denmark is this little narrow spit of land that sticks up off northern Germany. And then there's a couple of islands between it and Sweden. So it literally is narrow. But what does he mean? Your ambition makes it so. What, in the traditional Germanic political system, what should Hamlet be now? King. Yeah, he's got ambition. Hamlet, oh God. One of my favorite lines. I could be bounded in a nutshell and count myself a king of infinite space, were it not that I have bad dreams. And we could almost go back to Theseus' speech about dreams in A Midsummer Night's Dream again. Notice, I could be a king of infinite space, bounded in a nutshell. Okay? Infinite means what? Not finite. No boundary. But he says, I could be a king of infinite space in what? Like a walnut shell. Literally. This much space. And if I were in there, that space to me would be infinite. Were it not for bad dreams. What's he mean? Why do the bad dreams take away his infinite kingship? Where do dreams come from? That's why. The infinite space includes him, includes his mind, includes his mentality, includes what today we would call his subconscious. He has no notion. Shakespeare has no notion of the thing called the subconscious. It's not, doesn't come into existence as an idea till the 19th century. Okay? Where do dreams come from? Are they a product of bad, Ebenezer Scrooge thinks it's a bad piece of potato that makes Jacob Marley appear. Or a bad piece of beef, that makes Jacob Marley appear. And Jacob Marley rattles his chains and goes, okay. Not a bad piece of beef. You're really here. Where do dreams come from? Then, by the way, just side, segue. Astrophysicists tell us that from the point of the Big Bang, if there was a Big Bang, because the James Webb Telescope is kind of calling cosmology totally into question, but they tell us from the point of the Big Bang, the universe has been expanding ever since then. Expanding into what? What's outside the universe? Just let that sit and think and, ponder that for a bit. That's Shakespeare's kind of there. Were it not that I have bad dreams, which dreams indeed are ambition. Oh, if only I were king. For the very substance of the ambitious, is merely the shadow of a dream. Okay? Whole bunch of issues being brought up here. Substance, and it hasn't been mentioned, but I've got to use this word too. Okay? We'll get in this Friday. What is this? Anybody? Paper, right? What is it really? What's its essence? Okay? That's the appearance it takes. That's its what's called accidents. This is a medieval term. Okay? It looks like paper, right? It is. That's the form, that's the shape it takes. What is it really? What is it composed of? What makes up paper? Wood fiber. Its essence really is wood cellulose. That's what it is. This, its accidents, its form, its shape is shirt. Okay? What is it really? It's cotton. Okay? Notice what Guildenstern says, which dreams indeed are ambition, for the very substance of the ambitious is merely the shadow of a dream. So the substance, the thing that forms, that creates the ambitious person, he says, its essence, is the shadow of a dream. I think we talked about this briefly before. How do you make a shadow? You need a light, you need an object, and something to project onto. Floor, ground, wall, etc. Okay? But in order for the light to create a shadow, what must the object be? What must the object have? Solidity. The very substance of the ambitious is merely the shadow of a dream. Dreams don't have solidity. So how do you get shadows of a dream? Hamlet, the dream itself is but a shadow. Hamlet says, I could be king of infinite space, bounded within a nutshell, were it not for bad dreams. Now he says, dreams are a shadow. A shadow of what? There must be something else out there. Exactly the same thing Theseus said. Because the lover, the poet, and the madman can do what? They can create shapes, they can create forms, and they can comprehend joy, or they can apprehend joy. And the reason says if they can apprehend joy, if they can reach out and grab some notion of joy, then the mind says there must be some bringer of that joy. That is, the joy is the shadow. The thing behind it, that's what's real. This is getting at Plato and his whole philosophy of forms, of what is really real. Okay? Allegory of the cave, which I'll talk about Friday. Don't we have a quiz? Don't I have a quiz up? Yeah. Is it due tonight? Okay. Due tonight. All right, that's all for today.